I have a relationship with people who want to hear what I think is the truth, and I'm going to present both sides. And they may not be fair and balanced. There may not be equal weight put to each side, because that's not what the truth is. The truth isn't always 50-50.
Right.
So I live with that, but it gets more difficult because we're so tribal now.
Donald Trump has spent a lot of time criticizing you. You told me a couple years ago on air that you were afraid of what Trump could theoretically do if he ever were returned to the White House. How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's possible. Do I think he's going to start arresting comedians? I don't.
Out of all the media personalities Bill Maher has gone after over the years, few have faced as much heat as CNN's Jake Tapper. What started as a disagreement quickly turned into a major clash of opinions, shaking up the cable news world and sparking nonstop reactions online. People on both sides had plenty to say, and the drama spread fast. We've got all the details, so get ready, because this story gets pretty intense.
Early on, you say that Trump, quote, got the White House again, but he isn't going to get your mind. There are probably a lot of viewers that want to hear what you mean by that and how you want to achieve that.
So I'm not going to chase every rabbit down the hole like I did the first term. You know, that's what I mean about he's not going to get my mind.
Jake Tapper seemed to expect the usual routine. He brought up Trump, likely hoping Bill Maher would jump straight into one of his classic anti-Trump rants. Normally, that would have been an easy setup, but this time Maher didn't take the bait. Instead of going all in, he calmly avoided the trap and made it clear he wasn't interested in tearing into Trump the way he used to. No big meltdown, no dramatic punchlines, no viral moment. Just a quiet shift that clearly caught Tapper off guard. And honestly, it felt different. The old Bill Maher probably would have turned the conversation into a full-on Trump roast within seconds. That version of Maher made anti-Trump commentary a huge part of his act for years. But now, he seems far less interested in playing that same role again and again. Maybe he's tired of the nonstop outrage cycle. Maybe he thinks audiences are exhausted from hearing the same talking points every day. Or maybe he's starting to question who's really shutting down open conversations in today's media world. Whatever the reason, Tapper didn't get the reaction he was expecting. He was waiting for a headline-making moment, but instead he got restraint. And in today's loud media environment, that silence ended up saying a lot more than another rant ever could.
I'm just not going to pre-hate anything. I'm just going to hope for the best, and then when something serious happens, I'll comment on that. Otherwise, I have new rules and monologue as a place in the show every week to talk about invading Greenland and annexing Canada and other stuff that's perfect for comedy, but I'm not going to take it seriously.
You could see the reaction written all over Jake Tapper's face. He looked surprised, frustrated, maybe even a little uncomfortable. This clearly wasn't the version of Bill Maher he expected to show up. Tapper was probably expecting the classic Maher, fast, aggressive, and ready to tear into Trump at any moment. But instead, he got a much different version. A more frustrated and disillusioned Maher who seems increasingly fed up with where parts of the left have gone in recent years. And he didn't hide it. Maher made it clear he's tired of the nonstop outrage, the identity politics, and the pressure to always fall in line with one approved way of thinking. From his point of view, the left has become too focused on purity tests and public outrage instead of real conversations. What makes it interesting is that Maher isn't suddenly becoming conservative or trying to win over the right. He's still coming at this from the perspective of someone who has spent years identifying with liberal ideas. But now, he seems willing to openly criticize the parts of the movement he thinks are pushing people away. And that's where the tension really showed. While many people stay quiet to avoid backlash, Maher seems perfectly comfortable saying what others won't. Whether people agree with him or not, he's clearly done playing along with what he sees as a predictable political script.
I'm writing an election book, and one of the things I just stumbled on was a monologue you gave in October 2023, in which you warned the Democratic Party of Ruth Bader Biden. You were saying the American people think he's too old. You're worried about this. You had a great line about it doesn't matter if he's a national treasure and has done great things. If you got on an airplane and you heard that Buzz Aldrin was the pilot, you'd get off. I'm sorry for botching your very funny joke. But they didn't listen to you, but you were proven correct.
Yeah, and I felt I had standing to make that case because I had for so many years been the only person I know on television who was consistently railing against ageism.
Before we move on, there's something I've noticed lately that's hard to ignore. More and more big names on the left suddenly seem eager to profit from Biden's election collapse. Seriously, everywhere you look, someone's writing a new book or doing interviews about what went wrong for Democrats in November. And what's the main topic they all keep coming back to? Biden's age and concerns about his mental sharpness. What's interesting is that these are the same concerns many people were raising years ago, only to be mocked or brushed aside at the time. Back then, if you questioned Biden's fitness for office, you were quickly labeled a conspiracy theorist or accused of spreading partisan talking points. But now that the election fallout has hit hard, the conversation has completely changed. Suddenly, the same media voices that once defended Biden nonstop are openly discussing the very issues they used to dismiss. That's why a lot of people see it as pure opportunism. Instead of admitting they may have ignored obvious concerns earlier, some commentators now seem focused on rewriting the story after the fact. And for many critics, it feels less like honest reflection and more like a rush to protect reputations and stay relevant while public opinion shifts.
I have a relationship with people who want to hear what I think is the truth, and I'm going to present both sides. And they may not be fair and balanced. There may not be equal weight put to each side because that's not what the truth is. The truth isn't always 50-50.
Right.
So I live with that, but it gets more difficult because we're so tribal now.
I honestly think America would be in a much healthier place if more media figures approach things the way Bill Maher does. Even though Maher leans liberal, he's still willing to criticize his own side when he thinks they've gone too far. And that's something a lot of people respect. At the end of the day, journalism is supposed to be about honesty, not blind loyalty to a political team. It should be about asking tough questions, even when the answers make your own side uncomfortable. The problem is that many media outlets today seem more focused on protecting their audience or pushing a narrative than simply informing people. Everything becomes partisan, and that only creates more division and distrust. Imagine if more reporters and hosts were willing to challenge everyone equally instead of repeating talking points designed to keep their viewers happy. The public doesn't need more outrage or political cheerleading. It needs honest conversations rooted in reality. And whether people agree with Bill Maher or not, one reason he stands out is because he's willing to say things that others in the media often avoid. That kind of openness is something many people feel is missing today.
This was a case, okay, where Biden was too old. Having made that case that it's a case-by-case basis, I was now saying, yes, some of those cases are that the person just is too old for the job. And he was going to be, much like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, someone who was seen in history as one who stayed at the fair too long and cost his party dearly. And he did. And, you know, I don't think history is going to treat Joe Biden kindly for doing that.
Jake Tapper tried to defend Joe Biden with a line we've all heard before: age is just a number. His argument was that plenty of politicians older than Biden are still active, sharp, and capable of doing demanding jobs, so age alone shouldn't disqualify someone from running for president. But Bill Maher wasn't convinced. Maher pushed back by saying the issue isn't simply about how old someone is. In his view, it comes down to the individual person and how they're performing. And when it comes to Biden, Maher believes the concerns go beyond just a birth date. He pointed to Biden's public stumbles, verbal mistakes, and moments where he appears confused or low on energy. According to Maher, those moments are what raise questions for voters, not the number attached to Biden's age. His point was basically this: if someone shows signs that they're struggling, people are going to notice, regardless of whether they're 60, 70, or 80. The presidency is one of the toughest jobs in the world, and Maher argued it requires constant focus, energy, and sharp decision-making. Tapper clearly wanted Maher to soften his stance, but Maher stayed firm. And when that approach didn't work, the conversation quickly shifted as Tapper tried another angle to get a stronger reaction out of him.
Donald Trump has spent a lot of time criticizing you. You told me a couple years ago on air that you were afraid of what Trump could theoretically do if he ever were returned to the White House. How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's possible. Do I think he's going to start arresting comedians? I don't, but it's possible. And look, anything's possible with this guy. I'll put it this way. When George Bush was in the White House, it never even entered my mind. Never entered my mind that I couldn't say whatever I wanted to say without repercussions. And that's one of the great things about living in America. And we take America for granted and that kind of stuff, and maybe we can't anymore. So we'll see. But am I going to let it affect what I do? No. I mean, the day I feel like I can't say what I want without going to Guantanamo Bay.
Honestly, at this point, it almost felt a bit awkward for Jake Tapper. Every attempt to steer the conversation into a predictable direction just didn't land. Maher wasn't taking the bait at all. Instead of falling into the usual Trump talk, he kept flipping the conversation back in a way that caught Tapper off guard. Calm, sharp, and a little unpredictable. It started to feel less like a guided interview and more like a mismatch in expectations. Tapper would set something up, and Maher would shut it down with a completely different angle. If the goal was to get a familiar talking point, it didn't happen. And when a guest stops playing along with the expected script, the whole dynamic changes fast.
I do want to ask you before you go, and congratulations again on the special, but there's talk promulgated by you about maybe you quitting the HBO show, about maybe not touring anymore. Well, you said something to Jane Fonda about thinking about that. Where are you in your career? You still got a lot of good stand-up, a lot of good jokes in you, right? Like, tell us what's next.
Okay. I am stopping doing stand-up just because I'm tired of touring, just because I've been doing it for 40 years. I love it. Look, I love nothing more than being on stage somewhere telling jokes to strangers. It's been my entire life. It's been the most consistent thing in my life. But for those people who say to me, why don't you just do it a little bit? You can't do it a little bit. Stand-up is like being a boxer. You have to be in training. You can't just walk up there and do it. So I've been in training for 40 years. I need a break. And I'm tired of the travel. I'm tired of dragging my ass out of bed on Saturday morning to go to some place after I worked so hard on real time all week. Maybe I'll go back to it. But, you know, I have a podcast.
The interview wrapped up in under 7 minutes, short by any standard. Tapper seemed done, and the conversation clearly wasn't going the way he expected. Maher didn't argue loudly or push aggressively. He was just direct and honest, and that shifted the tone of the entire exchange. Instead of the usual back and forth, the discussion kept slipping out of Tapper's control. From there, it turned less about a debate and more about a mismatch in expectations. Maher didn't follow the familiar script, and that changed everything in real time. Supporters of Maher see this as a sign of something bigger. Media spaces that struggle when conversations don't stay predictable or one-sided. In their view, the moment things go off script, the discussion often gets shut down instead of explored. Whatever side you take, one thing is clear. This wasn't a typical interview, and it left people talking long after it ended.